In this section, you will find and compare slopes of lines. So the important question to ask is, what does slope mean? Slope is the rate of change of y. So if we look over here, this is how much y changes when x changes by this horizontal amount. And that's basically the definition of slope. It's the rate of change of y with respect to x, or we could say it's vertical change over horizontal change, and many of you are already used to hearing it as rise over run. So slopes of lines in the coordinate plane, let's look at that. When is the slope negative? The slope is negative when the line goes from left to right. So that's negative, and we will call this line A. So A has a negative slope because as x increases, y decreases. Positive slope. A line like this one and we'll call that one B, has a positive slope because you can see that as x increases, y increases. Well, how about zero slope? You get a zero slope when there is no rise. So what kind of a line is it that has a zero rise? Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is a horizontal line. It can be anywhere, so I'm going to go ahead and draw it here. And we will call this line C, which is a line that has an undefined slope. Do not confuse undefined with no slope. I know some textbooks use the word no slope. I would rather you use the word undefined. And the reason I like to think of it as undefined is when I look at this line, which I am going to call line D, its rise is infinite. It goes on forever and ever and ever. So infinity divided by a zero run is just infinity. So line D has an undefined slope. When would we want to compare slopes? So let's just take a look at that. We would want to compare slopes when we have two lines which are either parallel, as in lines M and N, or when two lines are perpendicular, as in A and B. When two lines are parallel, the slopes are equal. So if the slope of the first line, and I'll call this M1, equals negative 3/5, then the slope M2 of line N is also negative 3/5. So the slopes are equal, sign and everything. For two lines that are perpendicular, the definition of perpendicular is lines that intersect at right angles. The slope of one line is a negative reciprocal of the other. So once again, if I say this is M1 is negative 3/5, then the slope of A is going to be negative reciprocal. So the negative of a negative is a positive, 5/3. And just another way of remembering this is that M1 times M2 is negative 1. So let's test that out. Is negative 3/5 times 5/3 equal to negative 1? I believe it is. That checks. So the two lines are perpendicular. Special cases: vertical lines have slopes that are undefined but they are parallel. So we can't say the slopes of vertical lines are equal, but they are both undefined, they are parallel. And as far as perpendicular lines are concerned, any horizontal line and any vertical line is perpendicular. If you look at your x and y axis here, that's a horizontal line, and that, I didn't do a good job of that. So anyway, that's your vertical line. So in a coordinate plane, your x and y axes are always perpendicular. Now let's work some examples. If you want to determine which of two lines is steeper, when would that be useful? Let's say you were trying to climb two different mountains, and you would make an assessment. This one is too steep, or this one's steeper, and maybe today I'm just going to attempt the one with the gentle slope, and then tomorrow I'll be more experienced, so I'll climb the mountain with the steeper slope. But first I need to know what the slopes are. So objectively, I use algebra to figure out the slope. So let me find out the slope of line A. Remember, it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and basically that's the change in y. And go from, what I like to do is I like to write my points in a vertical fashion. I just find that easier. So my y's are the ones on the right, and my x's are the ones on the left. And I'll have -4 minus 3 over 2 plus 6, which is -7 over 8. So this has a slope that's negative, but it's -7 over 8. And the slope of line B is, let me write it again, 6, 1, 8, 3. This is my y value. This is my x value. So I have again y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 equals 1 minus 3 over 6 minus 8, and that is -2 over -2, which is 1. So when you compare the steepness, you look at the absolute value. So let's look at -7 over 8 and 1. Well, if you absolute value means that you disregard the sign and just look at compare the numbers. So we would conclude that MB is steeper because absolute value of 1 is greater than the absolute value of -7 over 8. Or I can state that as 1 is greater than 7 over 8. Okay, number 2 asks us to find the slope of the line that passes through the point -4, 6 and is perpendicular to line A above. So line A above is this line, and luckily for us we already know the slope of line A, and it is -7 over 8. So we want the slope of another line that passes through the point -4, -6 and is perpendicular to MA. I am going to call my new line line C. So its slope will be 8 over 7, negative reciprocal of negative 7 over 8. And I'm going to use the point slope form to find my new equation. So you get y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. This is called the point slope form. And here you only substitute for y1 and x1. So that would be negative 6, which gives me y plus 6 equals m, which is 8 over 7. X minus a negative 4 gives me, and this is all I need to do. If the question asks you to leave it in slope intercept form, girls, then go ahead and do that. Otherwise, it's perfectly acceptable to leave it in point slope form. Next question: how can you determine if 2 points, if 3 points are collinear? 2 points are always collinear. So find the slope again of the 2 points, these two, and then any one of the other two. So I'll say m1 equals negative 4 minus 3 over 2 minus a negative 6. Let me just check that. Negative 4 minus 3, 2 minus a negative 6, and I'll just write it like this. See, it's so much easier when you write it vertically. Ew. Except I wrote my points wrong. So let's try that again. So the points are 2, negative 4, and negative 6, 3. So that's my M1. My M2, I'll just take the next set of points. I'll take these two, and I find M2. M2 equals 3 minus 4 over negative 6 plus 14. So let me write the points here. Negative 6, 3, negative 14, 4, 3 minus 4. Yes, that checks. So I'm going to just go ahead and work out the maths. Negative 7 over 8. M2 equals negative 1 over positive 8. Okay. Well, what I notice is that these two slopes are not equal, so the points cannot be collinear. If the slopes were equal, then the points would be collinear. Collinear means they would all lie on the same line. These 3 points will form 2 segments which will form an angle other than 180. Okay, number 4. It says, okay, here we go. Find the unknown coordinates. So the line passes through the point negative 1y. Well, you know, I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to write my points down. Negative 1y, negative 6, 7. Okay, so these are my y coordinates, and I'm going to write my slope formula down. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and I'm going to plug and play. So I get y minus 7 over negative 1 minus negative, that's plus 6, and then I'm given that the slope is 2 over 5, so I plug that in. Now all I have to do is solve. 2 over 5 equals y minus 7, 5, and then you get 2 equals y minus 7, so y is equal to 9, and that's your answer.